Good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 1st. Happy August. Today is also the obligatory memorial of St. Alphonsus Liguori, wonderful holy priest and bishop, someone who meditated upon the passion of Christ and understood how that passion, that sacrifice, is tied up into the forgiveness of sins, which brings us eternal life. Then he understands perfectly the Eucharist, the source and summit of the Christian life, and the food of everlasting life. Let us always hunger for Jesus in the most blessed sacrament. In fact, August is dedicated to the Blessed Sacrament. I don't know if you know that. Just like July is dedicated to the precious blood, and August is dedicated to the Blessed Sacrament. Of course, August 15th, we have the Assumption of Our Lady, but if you were to do a theme, so to speak, it was a meditation on the Eucharist and how beautiful that is. Well, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to continue probably closing up this series on the Sacrament of Holy Matrimony. I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, it is an intense understanding of the sacrament. And I always like to review, go back, do another piece, go back and review. I think repetition is the mother of learning. And I hear so often as a priest, oh, I never heard that. Well, maybe you did or maybe you didn't, but it's always good to repeat so that it's kind of like a branding, like when you're talking about a certain topic, that it brands in your head and memory. And they say you have to listen to it 5 times before you say, oh, I got it. I know what that means. Because, in other words, it's just like wah, 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 Charlie Brown teacher. So you have to like dive into the mystery, so to speak. And marriage is crucial because it is the nucleus of family life. And it is in which men and women are called into a sacred bond to reflect Christ's marriage to us, the church, right? So I hope you got all that. That marriage is a mirror. Marriage of men and women are a mirror of Christ's marriage to his bride, the church. That he loves us for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness or in health. He will love and honor us all the days of our life, all the way into eternity. Praise God, right? Isn't that a beautiful gift? So this sacramental love is understood as permanent, exclusive, and procreative. Right? You can use other words for that. When I say permanent, I mean that it is enduring. It is enduring until death. That marriage is a covenant relationship. Not a contract, but a covenant. Like God has a covenant with us. Both men and women have a covenant with one another as God invites them and calls them to the sacrament. All of you say that I have been called to the priesthood, right? There was a calling there. But there's also a calling in marriage, that God calls men and women to that sacrament and to live that sacrament all the days of their life. Now, the sacrament of marriage, like the sacrament of holy orders, like the living out of the vocation of the single life or the consecrated life, is the means in which God wants to sanctify us, right? So he wants us to be holy. And how do we become holy? By our pattern of living, whatever that way of life is. I'm single, I'm a religious, I'm ordained, I'm married, okay? That way of life, that living out each day of your vocation, is the way in which holiness enters through your body and soul, and that God sees best fit to call you to that way of life. I hope that makes sense to everybody, because that is crucial in understanding the Christian life. How do I become holy? Well, I'm living out my vocation. If I don't live out my vocation that God has called me to, How am I to sanctify, to make holy this body? So all of us are to give him glory and to sanctify ourselves through his grace. Give God the glory. And then in my own vocational way of life, single, married, religious, ordained, sanctify myself. Holiness. Okay? So, permanent, indissoluble, procreative. Procreative. The openness to have children. As you all know, if a couple is not willing to have children, if they're closed to that, they can't enter into this sacramental marriage. Because this is the plan of God. It's divine law. It's always back to divine law. The sacramental character of marriage reflects divine law. It accepts divine law. It lives divine law. Permanent, unitive, indissoluble, procreative, life-giving. They're the ends of marriage. They're the ends, or we'll say the spiritual goods of marriage. You know, so I want to remind everybody again, like people will say, well, I just want to, to love him or to love her. Yes, we're to love everybody. In a unique way, you are to live a conjugal love, a love that empties oneself and gives oneself to another. In other words, like Christ, you surrender yourself in total love. Isn't that what we're called to do as Christians? Let go and let God. The beautiful laying down of our life for the other. Husbands and wives must do that equally. Have an understanding of I surrender. How a beautiful of letting go and living together as one in the sacrament of marriage. Living together. The two become one. How does that happen? How does that happen? Well, it happens only by God's grace and the surrender. Each and every day. Not the day of marriage, but every day of living out of marriage. Living out of marriage. The full expression of love, that full physical expression of love is the conjugal act. And that must be always open to human life. We need to understand that. Contraceptives are immoral for the man or the woman. That's why even sterilization of a man or a woman is immoral. Did you know that? It's not moral. The sterilization of a woman through tubular ligation or a vasectomy for the man, that's also immoral. Now, maybe you know this, and I'm just going to, talk to you about it. Maybe you don't know about it, and this is the first time you're hearing that. So, it's important to know all of these things, and I can't address them in its entirety here on this YouTube channel, but it's good for you to go and begin to research and look at the moral life of you and me as Catholics. What is God calling us to into our physical bodies? Okay? So, permanent, indissoluble, procreative. For the procreation and education of children. Mom and dads are the first teachers of the way of faith. How do you promote the faith to your children and grandchildren? Are they baptized? Do they receive penance and Eucharist? Have they been confirmed? Do they go to Sunday Mass? Do you pray before meals? Do you take them to confession maybe at least 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a year? Do you think this is just going to happen? It doesn't. Mom and dads have to show them the way by their own example. So just like we take them to sports and we take them to dance and we take them to crafts and we take them to scouts and we take them to all these other things that they're interested in, mom and dads have an obligation to make sure that their children are getting all the spiritual goods necessary. And that does not mean just attending Catholic school or prep or homeschooling. You know, there are the 3 different avenues. Catholic school, prep, years ago we called it CCD, and then homeschooling. Even for homeschoolers, we need to follow the curriculum of the Archdiocese when it comes to the teaching of the Catholic faith. Many people say, what do they do at homeschool? Like, how do they do that? What kind of curriculum do they follow? Well, for religion, we know definitely it follows the Archdiocese. The Archdiocesan curriculum for religion. You can find that on our website. Have you been on our website lately? Do you go to the Church of St. Mary, Shrensville, or St. Mary Roman Catholic Church, Shrensville, Pennsylvania? Look at our website. Lisa Roberts is the administrator of our website. Fantastic job. She's also the chair of the finance committee for the Board of Limited Jurisdiction of the day school. You know, our people are amazing here. I mean, I'm telling you. I'm not just saying that because I sit at this desk and I'm the pastor. I've been at other places. They're good here. They get it here. They get the whole thing. I'm like amazed when I talk to people and like, they get it. It's unbelievable. Well, anyway, the nuptial mass between a Catholic and a Catholic, a nuptial ceremony between a Catholic and a baptized non-Catholic. Or at times they could have a nuptial mass too, right? Especially if the non-Catholic, the non-baptized Catholic, doesn't have a lot of family members coming to the mass. So they might opt to have a nuptial mass. So we're talking about 2 Catholics. The norm would be have a nuptial mass, right? When we're talking about a Catholic and a baptized non-Catholic, it depends. You could have a nuptial mass or a nuptial ceremony, because sometimes the non-Catholic does not have a lot coming to the ceremony. So why don't you have a nuptial mass? And then you have a Catholic marrying a non-baptized, and that is always to be a nuptial ceremony. Because in order to have a nuptial mass, both have to be baptized. Both have to be baptized. Okay? So, and there's a lot of things that we could do with the neutral setting of a baptized and a non-baptized. Does it have to always be in a church? It does not. Let's say if you're a Catholic and you're marrying a Jewish woman, does it have to be in the Catholic Church building? Has to be witnessed by a Catholic priest, or a dispensation is given. So it's always good to have a conversation. Always good to have a conversation with the priest, because you'd be surprised what is permissible when it comes to marriage in these areas, okay? And it's nice to prepare the Mass or the ceremony, picking the readings, speaking to the director of music and picking the, of course, the hymns, and really looking at all of that and preparing it beautifully. It's very, very nice. And those who are going to read for you, those who are going to bring up the gifts, very, very nice. Now, finally, I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about the ceremony itself. Do you know it's probably recommended that the bride and the groom come in together. Many people think that the church wants the bride to come in alone. Not necessarily. I mean, that is an option, right? But the sacrament is ministered by the couple themselves, and the priest or the deacon witnesses the vows. My job is to witness the vows, along with the best man and the maid of honor, or I should say, the two witnesses. Remember, you don't have to have a man and a woman. You could have witnesses are different than godparents. See, when we talk about parents or godparents, we're talking about man and a woman. When we're talking about a witness of a marriage, we could talk about two women, two men, or a man and a woman. I just want you to know that, right? You don't need a best man and a maid of honor. You just need two witnesses. They don't even have to be Catholic. They have to be breathing, I always tell them. They always ask me, Father, do they have to be Catholic? I said, no, just as long as they breathe and they're alive and they could hear and witness what you have said. So most likely adults over 18, that they're focused, like they're understanding all of this. They're not just there because they're cute, or they're not just there because, oh, this is a friend of mine who's like, she's only 15. Like, they have to be totally with it. It has to be beyond just getting dressed up. And I say that because sometimes that interferes with the whole sacramentality of marriage. Because there's so much placed on the bling, the dress, the makeup, the hair, the veil, the shoes. There's so much emphasis on all of that and the hype of all that. By the time that you get into the door of the church, you're so exhausted, you have no idea what's happening. Do you know what I mean? That can happen. I'm not saying that happens all the time. It depends upon the maturity of the person. And for the man too. I mean, the man has a big play in the wedding, doesn't he? I know that many people say, oh, it's the girl. She does everything. And the guy says, yeah, whatever you want, just not to cause a fight. But that's not true, or that should not be the case. If the two become one, they should be both involved. Seriously. I know what you're going to say. The bride usually plans everything, but she needs to talk to the man. Now, maybe the guy doesn't even care about all this stuff. That's not his world. But it's nice to talk about it. Now, women come to me and say, Father, I try to do what you say. He could care less. He just says, well, honey, why don't you just plan that? I'm sure it's going to be fine. Okay, fine. But you still have to have a conversation. He has to know what's happening. He just can't show up. He has to have an understanding of what's happening here. Okay? So I think it's good. It's good to understand that. And the reason why the church recommends the man and woman coming together is because they're the ministers of the sacrament. In fact, they come in last. For Mass, the priest comes in last because he's the minister of the sacrament, right? Right, exactly. So the bride and the groom come in last. I come right before them because I'm a witness to the ceremony, and they come in last. So they walk in hand. That coming of the bride and the groom, or the bride coming in last with the veil over her head, is all from Elizabethan age of the prearranged weddings. In other words, the veil was to cover her face because the father, when he was walking his daughter up the aisle, he had it prearranged all this. Like, he picked the guy out. He wanted to know if he had a job, if he could take care of her, and all that. And then she came in the church with the dad, veil covered, not to see him. And then the dad lifts up it's called a blusher. Do you know what that's called? It's called a blusher. And it goes over the head. And then the dad takes both of their hands and joins them together. See, the dad prearranged all this. She didn't know who he was. I mean, when she takes off the veil, she could have gone, ah! But that's what the dad wanted, because he has a job, he's good, he could take care of her and all that. Well, that's where all of that came from. All of that came from. That's why the guy was at the altar waiting. Well, it's one of those small T's tradition that's still stuck, even though we don't believe in all that. The church is trying to get away from that and saying, well, why don't the couple just come in together? Come in with the bridal party. And because, like a lot of people say, oh, you can't see her, it's bad luck. Stop that. It's bad luck if you don't go to Mass on Sunday. Let's talk about that. It's bad luck if you don't have children. Let's talk about that. Don't talk about, oh, it's bad luck if you see him on the day of the wedding. No, it's not. No, it's not. Stop thinking of all those kind of weird fairy tales and kind of superstitious things. So they come in together, right? And they come to the altar because they themselves are coming to the altar, feeling called by God to enter into this life. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So anyway, I think you get a little bit understanding more and more of the sacramentality of marriage and entering into this sacrament within the context of Mass or a ceremony, and how beautiful that is. The next time we meet tomorrow, I'm going to go through the ritual and let you hear what the words are, what they say when they get to the altar. Because after the homily is the rite of marriage, whether it's a ceremony or a Mass. Now remember, I told you what a ceremony is. Liturgy of the Word and vows. Mass, a nuptial Mass, is the rite of marriage after the homily. The rite of marriage after the homily also of the liturgy of the Word, the nuptial ceremony. So don't confuse the word ceremony as the liturgical event. They're both liturgical events. One has Mass, one does not have Mass. So we just remove the Mass part out, and that's called a nuptial ceremony. The Mass part goes in, and that's the nuptial Mass. Okay? I'm just trying to make it simple for you, because you hear that, you say I thought they were both ceremonies. Well, they are, but we call the one without Mass and the distribution of Holy Communion the nuptial ceremony. And the one we call the nuptial Mass is, of course, Mass, and then right after the homily, the rite of marriage, vows, rings, all that. Okay? So today we have a shout out. Today is Cindy Ty's birthday. Happy birthday, Cindy. August 1st. Happy August. Happy St. Alphonsus Liguori. Everybody, go Google St. Alphonsus Liguori. Very nice. Very nice holy man and bishop. Okay? Learn about some of these men and women who are our heroes and our heroines. Okay? And Cindy, you're making God glorified by your life. You're a good Catholic woman, Cindy. You're a good woman. You're a faithful Catholic. You express your faith. You live your faith. And you try day by day to communicate that faith to all you meet. And all of us here at St. Mary's know that and love you. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cindy. Happy birthday to you. Have a nice day, everybody.